Tycoon businessman returns to find his ex-wife with twin boys he never knew existed after his abandonment. It was a gray morning when the private jet touched down on the old city runway. Clouds hung low in the sky, like forgotten memories waiting to resurface. The air was thick with mist and tension, as if the city itself held its breath. Inside the sleek, black car that waited by the terminal sat a man who had everything except peace. Leonardo CO, tycoon, billionaire, visionary. That's what the world called him. But beneath the custom-made suit and the silent Rolex ticking on his wrist, there was something else, an emptiness he had mastered the art of ignoring. He hadn't been back in nearly 10 years. Not since the day he left everything behind. His modest apartment, his struggling marriage, and her. As the car rolled through the familiar streets of his hometown, the buildings felt smaller, quieter, older. Trees he once ran past as a child stood still like statues, witnesses to all that time had eroded, and all that it had preserved. Leonardo rested his head against the cool glass of the window. He wasn't the same man who had once walked those sidewalks in worn-out sneakers and a heart full of dreams. Now, he was known across continents. He had conquered boardrooms in Tokyo, dined with royalty in Dubai, and signed deals that shifted economies. And yet, something inside him stirred with unease, not regret. He had trained himself to silence that word. But maybe something like it. The voice of his assistant crackled through the intercom, interrupting his thoughts. "Sir, we're about 5 minutes from the hotel. The board is expecting you at the merger meeting by noon." Leonardo didn't answer right away. He looked down at the leather folder resting on his lap. Inside, contracts worth billions. Another step toward becoming one of the 10 most powerful men in Asia. And yet, he couldn't bring himself to open it. Instead, he said quietly, "Detour. I want to drive by Green Hill Avenue." There was a pause. The driver knew what that meant. "As you wish, sir." The car turned. The cityscape shifted from high-rises and boutiques to quieter streets, lined with cafes, bookstores, and memories. And there it was, Green Hill Avenue, the place where he had lived with her, where everything had started and ended. The car slowed down in front of a pale yellow building with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox. He could still see the window where they used to sit on rainy nights, dreaming of better tomorrows. Leonardo's throat tightened. He hadn't meant to feel anything. He had trained himself for years to live without feelings, without her. But there she was, like a ghost etched into the bricks. Not her body, but her presence. The echo of her laughter in the corners of the street. He clenched his fists, whispering to himself, "You chose this. You had to leave. She couldn't follow you into the life you were meant for." And yet, his eyes didn't leave that window. Back then, they had been two dreamers with more love than money. Clara, with her radiant eyes and bare feet, would twirl around their living room to the sound of an old piano. She used to call him her storm. Unpredictable, brilliant, destructive. He hadn't meant to hurt her, but in the world of tycoons and empires, love was a luxury he could no longer afford. So, one night, after yet another argument about bills, stress, and how she said he was becoming someone she no longer recognized, he packed his things and walked out. She cried on the floor. He didn't look back. And now, 10 years later, the silence of that street screamed louder than any goodbye. His phone buzzed. A call from Veronica, his current fiancée, glamorous and sharp, the kind of woman who looked good in the spotlight and never questioned his ambition. He stared at the screen and let it ring. For the first time in years, Leonardo felt something he didn't know how to name. Regret? Longing? Or maybe the quiet realization that no amount of power could erase the weight of an unresolved past. As the car pulled away from the building, Leonardo glanced at the sidewalk, and someone, caught his eye. A little boy, running, laughing, hair like his, eyes like his, too familiar. Leonardo blinked. His heart jumped. He craned his neck to look again. But the boy had disappeared behind a hedge. "Sir?" the driver asked. Leonardo didn't answer. Instead, he whispered under his breath, almost afraid to hear his own voice, "That couldn't be." The car continued forward, but Leonardo's mind stayed behind. With the window, with the laughter, with the ghost of a woman who once loved him more than anything in this world. And the shadow of a child who should not exist. Not unless the past had left more than just memories behind. Would you like me to continue with the next topic in this same style? Você diz. Certo? Agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a história sem marcos com o nome de cada tópico que for desenvolve. Me conte sobre o tópico tu com dialogo como su faço espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com muita emoção. Com muitos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters o ChatGPT diz. Of course, here's the development of topic 2, continuing the story in emotional, cinematic storytelling style, rich in feelings and told in a linear timeline as if you're watching a deeply moving Korean drama. The perspective follows Clara now, bringing you into her quiet but strong world. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of a small but cozy apartment. The scent of toast and cinnamon drifted through the air, mixing with the sound of a child's laughter. Not one, but two voices echoed, harmonious, full of innocence and life. Gabriel, you stole my sock again. It's not stealing if I found it first. Pair of boys, identical. In every feature but different in energy, darted through the narrow hallway. Mateo, the quieter one, was trying to get dressed for school, while Gabriel ran in circles, sock in hand, giggling. From the kitchen, a woman turned at the sound of chaos. Her hands were flour-dusted, a whisk between her fingers. Her eyes, tired but full of light, followed the boys with the gaze of someone who knew joy and pain in equal measure. Clara. She wore a simple beige sweater, hair tied in a bun, and a small smile that came naturally now, though it hadn't always. Boys, please. 5 minutes. We don't want to miss the bus again, do we? The twins paused. Gabriel tilted his head. Is the teacher going to be mad again if we're late? Clara walked over, kneeling so she was eye level with them. No one will be mad. But remember, the world is kinder to people who show up on time. Mateo gave a solemn nod. Okay, Mama, as she helped them get ready, brushing their hair and buttoning their shirts. Clara's hands moved with the ease of years of repetition. She had done this alone since the beginning, from their first fever to their first fall. Every tear they shed had landed in the palms of her hands, and every laugh had been music that kept her going. Did Dad ever make you late for anything? Gabriel asked suddenly. Clara froze for a second, the brush midair. The question hit like ice down her spine. Not because it was the first time, but because it always felt like the first time. She forced a gentle smile. You know the rules, Carino. We don't talk about people we've never met. But he was real, right? Mateo asked, stepping closer. You said we came from love. Her throat tightened. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. And then, she nodded. Yes, you did. You were born from love. And that's all you need to know for now. The boys didn't push further. They had learned, even at their age, that some silences had walls around them. When they finally left for school, Clara returned to the kitchen. She looked at the now cold cup of coffee, untouched. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it, and for just a second, she allowed herself to feel. She walked to the small dresser in the corner, opened the bottom drawer. Hidden beneath old dance costumes and baby clothes was a single photo. A younger Clara stood in it, wearing a stage dress, smiling into the camera. Next to her, with his arm wrapped tightly around her waist, was Leonardo. His smile was charming. His eyes were fire. Her body leaned toward his like she belonged there. She stared at it for a moment, then put it back and closed the drawer. Not today, she whispered. I don't have time to break today. Later that afternoon, Clara stood in a large mirrored studio, watching as children twirled and stumbled through ballet moves. Her eyes moved from one student to the next, encouraging, correcting, smiling. It was her sanctuary. The studio wasn't grand, Old wooden floors and mirrors with cracked corners. But it was hers. After the class ended, one of the parents approached. "You're wonderful with them," the woman said, admiring. "I can't imagine raising 2 boys and doing all this on your own. You're a force." Clara laughed softly. "Some days I feel like a puddle. But thank you." The mother leaned in, curious. "Do their father help at all?" That familiar sting returned. Clara kept her face calm. "No, he's not in the picture." She didn't say more. She never did. Not because she hated him, but because the wound was still raw even after 9 years. He had left her. Not cruelly, not with violence, but with silence. A silence that screamed she was not part of his future. She had found out about the pregnancy just a week after he walked out. Her first instinct had been to call him, to run after him, to scream that she was carrying his child. But every phone call went unanswered, every message ignored. And then one day a lawyer called her. Cold, polite. "Mr. CO has formally requested no further contact. Financial arrangements can be made if necessary." She hung up. That night, Clara sat alone on the bathroom floor, her hand on her stomach, whispering to her unborn babies. "You won't grow up begging for anyone's love. I will be enough. I have to be." And she was. Even when the bank threatened to take her apartment. Even when she sold her last pair of point shoes to buy formula. Even when she danced in restaurants for tips while nursing fevers at night. She had been enough. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. It didn't mean that, some nights, when the boys were asleep and the house was quiet, she didn't ache for a man who had once held her like the world disappeared when they kissed, who had made promises in whispers, who had chosen ambition over them. And now, without knowing, he was back, somewhere in the city, breathing the same air. Clara didn't know it yet, but fate was already stitching their stories back together. She hadn't thought about him this much in years. Why now? Her fingers absent-mindedly traced the curve of the window pane. Maybe it was the question Gabriel had asked. Maybe it was the look in Mateo's eyes, that gentle ache when he asked about a man he had never met. Or maybe, though she wouldn't admit it out loud, maybe it was a strange tension in the air, as if something was coming. Something she couldn't name. The knock came just after 9 p.m. She flinched. No one ever visited her this late. Heart suddenly racing, she crossed the small living room and opened the door cautiously. "Evelyn!" Clara exhaled in relief. Her best friend, wrapped in a soaked trench coat, looked at her with wild eyes. She stepped inside quickly, removing her scarf, water dripping onto the floor. "You are not going to believe what I just heard," Evelyn said, pulling out her phone. "Look," Clara frowned. "Evie, what?" "Just watch." It was a video, a business press conference. Dozens of reporters crowded around a long table draped in black silk. And, sitting at the center of it, in a suit worth more than Clara's rent for the year, was him. Leonardo. His hair was shorter now, his jaw more chiseled, colder. But those eyes, they hadn't changed. They were just as she remembered, only darker now, less alive. Clara's fingers twitched. Her knees almost buckled. "He's back," Evelyn said, her voice soft now. "He flew in for some billion-dollar merger. He's staying here, in the city." Clara closed her eyes. Her heart was no longer just racing. It was crashing against her ribcage like a wild thing trying to escape. "I need you to breathe," Evelyn whispered, stepping closer. "I know what this does to you, but you're not that girl anymore. You're stronger now. He can't touch what you've built." But Clara was shaking. She hadn't prepared for this. She had always thought of him as a ghost, powerful, yes, but distant, locked away in a time capsule labeled before. And now he was back, real, breathing the same air, maybe walking the same streets, maybe passing by the same bakery where she took the boys on Sundays. Evelyn lowered her voice. "He doesn't know, does he?" Clara shook her head. "I never told him. I tried. Once. I went to his building. Security wouldn't let me through. Then, I got that call from his lawyer. Said there was nothing left to discuss." She swallowed hard. Her voice cracked. "He chose to leave. He made that clear." Evelyn sat beside her on the couch. drying her hands with a tissue. But what if he sees them, Clara? What if he recognizes them? Clara didn't answer, because that fear had already taken root in her heart. She remembered the last day, so clearly, the screaming, the silence, the way he had stood in the doorway with his suitcase, refusing to meet her eyes. "I can't keep living this way, Clara," he had said, his voice distant. "I'm drowning here," she had begged, not for herself but for them, for what they were. "We're supposed to fight together," she had said, clutching his wrist. "That's what love is." His eyes had softened for a moment, then hardened again. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I've been offered a position overseas. It's everything I've worked for. I can't say no." Clara remembered crying, falling to her knees, the taste of humiliation bitter in her mouth. "Then take me with you," she had said through tears. "We'll go. We'll figure it out." But he pulled away like her touch burned him. "I can't be who you need anymore." And then he was gone. A week later, she found out she was pregnant. Back in the present, Clara covered her face with her hands. "I used to dream he'd come back," she whispered. "For years, I pictured what I'd say, how I'd yell, how I'd throw everything in his face. And then slowly, I stopped waiting. I stopped wanting." Evelyn reached for her hand. "Then maybe this isn't about him at all. Maybe it's about you, about the choice you'll make now." Clara nodded slowly, wiping a tear that slipped down her cheek. "I don't want him near them, Evie. I don't want him confusing them or hurting them. They're happy. They're safe." A silence fell between them, and then Evelyn asked the question Clara had been avoiding even in her own thoughts. "What if they want to know him?" Clara said nothing, because the truth was, she didn't know the answer. That night, after Evelyn left, Clara stood in the boys' room for a long time. Matteo was curled up with his arm over Gabriel, both of them breathing softly, their faces angelic and untroubled. She sat at the edge of the bed, brushing their hair with her fingers. "You are everything I've ever done right," she whispered to them. "And I would do it all again, even the pain, if it meant I'd have you." Outside, the city lights flickered. Somewhere, in a five-star suite not far from them, Leonardo Cio slept without knowing that just a few streets away lived the two children who bore his eyes, and the woman he had left behind, still carrying the weight of a goodbye that had never truly ended. And fate, slow, quiet, and unrelenting, was preparing to make them collide, not as lovers, not even as enemies, but as something more dangerous, strangers bound by truth. The studio was empty, quiet. The sun bled through the high windows, casting soft golden streaks across the wooden floor. The mirror showed not just her reflection but her history, her scars, her strength. She inhaled, then raised her arms slowly. 1-2 step, pivot, extension. The music hadn't even started yet. She didn't need it. The rhythm lived in her bones. She moved across the studio like a shadow of the woman she once was, the woman who danced with fire in her veins, before heartbreak, before motherhood, before everything. But her body remembered. Even after years of neglect and fatigue, it remembered. She spun, faltered slightly, caught herself, and breathed through the burn in her legs. "I still have this," she whispered in her mind, "even if I lost everything else." The door creaked open softly. Clara turned, startled. It was Leah, one of the studio's youngest students, her oversized dance bag dragging behind her. "Miss Clara, I came early. I didn't want to be home." Clara gave her a warm smile, slightly out of breath. "That's all right, sweetheart. Come in. You can stretch while I finish." Leah nodded and sat near the bar, quietly watching Clara as if watching a fairy tale unfold. Clara turned back toward the mirror, took one last breath, and began again. This time she let it all out. The fear, the doubt, the memories. Each movement was a confession. Every turn, a plea. She danced not as a teacher, not even as a woman, but as a soul desperate to speak where words always failed her. By the time she stopped, her cheeks were wet, not from sweat. Leah clapped gently. "That was the prettiest thing I've ever seen," Clara laughed softly, wiping her face. Thank you, mi amor. Sometimes we dance to remember who we are. As more children trickled into the studio, the quiet became noise. Again, Clara's instructor voice returned. Sharp, kind, focused. She corrected postures, encouraged timid attempts, and tied ribbons around tiny ankles. Her hands moved with care, her voice a bomb. But inside, her thoughts were chaos. Because all morning, the city felt different. More alert, more awake, as if the streets themselves were whispering of something coming. Something that could not be avoided. Near the end of class, Clara noticed a tall figure just outside the glass windows. He stood still, watching. She blinked. No, not him. Just a man waiting for someone. But for a moment, her breath had caught. Clara? It was Evelyn again, standing in the doorway with that look on her face. The one that said, "You're not going to like this." Clara excused herself quickly and met her outside the classroom. "I didn't want to text you," Evelyn said. "I thought maybe you'd want to hear this in person." Clara's heart dropped. "What is it?" "There's going to be a gala this weekend," Evelyn said, pulling out her phone. "A fundraiser for the arts, sponsored by one of Leonardo's companies. He's attending, and so is almost every media outlet in the city." Clara crossed her arms tightly. "And they're partnering with youth programs, dance schools. There's a chance, small but real, that your studio might be invited to perform. Or to attend." Clara didn't respond. Her mouth went dry. "You have to prepare for that possibility," Evelyn continued gently. "If your kids go, if you go, he could see them." Clara stepped back, leaning against the wall for support. "He doesn't know. There's no reason for him to look twice. They have his eyes, Clara. Exactly his eyes." Clara pressed her hand to her chest. "Then I'll decline. I'll say we can't participate." Evelyn shook her head slowly. "You've fought so hard for this school, for these kids. You need the exposure. And more importantly, your boys deserve to shine." Clara hated her for being right. "Do you think he'll reach out?" she asked quietly, as if saying it louder would make it real. "I don't know," Evelyn replied. "But if he does, what are you going to say?" Clara turned her face to the windows again, where her students danced and stumbled and laughed. She watched Mateo help Leah with her steps, the same way his father used to help her when they first met. What would she say? How do you speak to the man who walked away before you could tell him he was going to be a father? How do you explain years of loneliness, of watching your children grow up with questions in their eyes and no answers to give? How do you explain that you built an entire world without him, and now he threatens to unravel it just by existing in the same room? "I'll say the truth," Clara said finally, her voice firm, "that he lost the right to ask anything from me. The day he chose his ambition over his family." Evelyn didn't answer. She just hugged her, tightly. That night, after putting the boys to bed, Clara stood in the hallway staring at an unopened envelope that had arrived earlier. It was from the city's Arts Council. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. A formal invitation to perform at the gala. And suddenly, the walls she had built so carefully around her life began to crack. Somewhere in the city, Leonardo CEO sat in a boardroom reviewing documents, unaware that his future was about to be rewritten. Not with ink, but with the truth. And Clara? Clara was preparing for the performance of her life. But this time, it wasn't on stage. This time, it would be face-to-face with the man who had no idea that he had left behind not one, but two legacies. Leonardo CEO. He stepped from a black car, dressed in a classic tuxedo. Sleek, controlled, unreadable. Flashes from cameras lit his face, but he didn't flinch. He was used to this. He thrived in it. But deep inside, beneath the tailored fabric and diamond-studded cufflinks, there was something restless. He hadn't slept well in days. Ever since he arrived, something felt off. The streets, the buildings, even the quiet laughter of children in a nearby park a few days ago had stirred something in him that he couldn't silence. "Mr. CEO," a journalist called, jogging beside him. "How does it feel to return home after nearly a decade?" Leonardo offered a polite nod. It feels different. The city has changed. Or maybe you have, the journalist said, half joking. Leonardo didn't smile. He kept walking. Inside the gala, music played from a string quartet. Champagne glasses clinked. He was quickly pulled into conversation after conversation. Handshakes, smiles, curated charm. But nothing touched him. Not until the MC took the stage. And now, she said, a special performance from the children of one of our local community schools, led by none other than Clara Valencia. His glass slipped slightly in his hand. The name rang like a bell inside him. Familiar, sharp, beautiful. His heart stuttered once. Then again. Clara? He turned toward the stage. The curtains parted. A dozen children, dressed in white and gold, stepped onto the stage like sunlight had taken form. They moved in perfect formation, delicate and full of grace. He watched them in silence. Then 2 boys stepped forward. His breath caught in his throat. They were identical, around 9 years old. Brown hair, soft curls. Their eyes, his eyes. He couldn't move. They danced with confidence, like the music was part of them, like the floor belonged to them. Their rhythm was familiar, natural, perfect. Leonardo's world tilted. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. Time slowed. The air thickened. And then, as the performance ended, the children took their bows. The crowd applauded, rising to their feet. Cheers, smiles. But Leonardo couldn't hear any of it. Because at the edge of the stage, standing behind the children, was a woman in a long navy blue dress. Simple, elegant, poised. Clara. Her hair was pinned back loosely. Her hands were gently clasped, and though she smiled at the children, there was a tension in her jaw, a fire in her eyes. Their eyes met, and in that instant, everything fell silent. All the years between them collapsed. He didn't move, couldn't, neither did she, but her gaze told him everything. You know now. She stepped off the stage quickly, ushering the children backstage. The audience began to disperse, heading for the open bar, chatting about the touching performance, the grace of the young dancers. No one saw the storm building in Leonardo's chest. He stood still for a long moment, then set his glass down and began to walk, not toward the exit, but toward the hallway leading behind the stage. He didn't have a plan, only a need. Backstage, Clara gathered the children. "Wonderful job, my loves," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You were perfect. Go with Ms. Irene now, okay? Your parents are waiting." The twins looked up at her. "Are you okay, Mama?" Matteo asked quietly. "I'm fine, baby," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "Go on." As the children disappeared down the corridor, Clara took a deep breath, closing her eyes. She knew. She felt him before she saw him. She turned slowly. Leonardo stood there, just a few feet away, like a ghost she'd spent years trying to forget. Only now he was real, and he knew. The silence between them burned. His voice was low, shaken. "They're mine." She didn't answer. "They're mine, Clara. Aren't they?" She looked at him. Her eyes filled with a rage that had cooled into something sharper than ice. "You left. You chose to leave. And you never looked back." He stepped forward. "You didn't tell me." "I tried," she snapped. "I came to your office. They turned me away. And then your lawyer called and made it very clear that you wanted no part of the past." He paled. "I didn't know." "No," she cut in. "You didn't care to know. There's a difference." His hands trembled. "Why didn't you?" "You don't get to ask questions," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You don't get to show up in a tuxedo after 9 years and suddenly demand answers." Leonardo's jaw clenched. "I never meant to hurt you. But you did. I would have, Clara, if I had known." "What?" she said bitterly. "You would have come back? Married me out of guilt? Stolen them away to raise in your skyscraper penthouse? Don't you dare stand here and rewrite history." His voice cracked. "They look just like me." Her eyes softened. For a moment, just a flicker. "They do. And every day I've looked into their eyes and wondered how you could walk away from something so full of life. Tears threatened to fall, but she didn't let them. Not in front of him. Not again. I raised them without you. I cried with them, laughed with them, sat up all night with them when they were sick. I worked 3 jobs so they could eat and dream and dance. He stepped closer. Let me meet them, please. Her body tensed. They don't know who you are. Then tell them. And say what, Leonardo? That their father left before they were born and decided now. That he wants to play family. His eyes begged her. I don't want to hurt them. Then stay away. I can't. His voice was hoarse. Clara, I saw them. I felt something for the first time in years. Let me make it right. You can't undo this, she whispered. No, he said softly. But maybe I can start by not walking away again. She looked at him, her lips trembling. She didn't look back. She couldn't. By the time she got home, the boys were already asleep. The apartment was dim and quiet, the soft ticking of the kitchen clock echoing in the silence. She sat at the table, the invitation from the gala still in her purse, and pulled it out with slow fingers. Her eyes scanned the embossed letters, the elegant logos, and she suddenly felt sick. Everything was spinning again. The life she had spent years building, simple, quiet, safe, was suddenly full of cracks. And he had seen them. He had seen them. Clara laid her head down on the cool wood of the table, closing her eyes. She had survived so much. But this, she didn't know if she had the strength to do it again. Not with him standing in front of her, looking like a memory that refused to stay buried. The next day passed like fog. She moved through it half awake, half afraid. She taught her classes. She packed the boys' lunches. She smiled when she had to, but inside, something was unraveling. That evening, as she picked the twins up from school, Gabriel ran toward her first, a wide grin on his face. Mama, we're doing a play at school. I get to be the prince. Clara smiled and bent down to hug him. Of course you do, mi amor. You've always had the heart of one. Mateo followed behind, holding something in his hand, a small folded flyer from the gala. Someone had left copies at the school. Are we going to this again? He asked. Clara's smile faltered. No, baby. That was a one-time thing. Mateo looked at her for a long second, as if sensing something beneath her words. He always saw deeper than his brother. Always had. Clara turned quickly, distracting herself. Come on, let's go home. But just as they stepped onto the sidewalk, a voice called out behind them. Clara! She froze. The boys turned. Leonardo was there, standing just a few feet away. No bodyguards, no suit, just a plain coat, black slacks, and an expression on his face that was both nervous and raw. Gabriel tilted his head. Who's that? Before Clara could answer, Leonardo took a slow step forward. I'm sorry, he said gently. I didn't mean to come like this. I didn't know how else. Mateo blinked. Do we know you? Clara felt her heart drop into her stomach. Leonardo knelt down to their eye level, and his voice softened in a way Clara hadn't heard in years. I think you don't, but I know you. The boys looked confused, shifting closer to their mother. Gabriel whispered, Is he from your school, Mama? Clara couldn't speak. Leonardo stood up again and met her eyes. I just want to talk. She clenched her jaw. Not here. There was a small cafe across the street. Quiet, tucked into a corner, with outdoor tables and fairy lights that hadn't yet been turned on. She walked toward it without saying anything, her hand tight around the boys. Leonardo followed, a careful distance behind. Inside, the waitress greeted them kindly, sensing the tension but saying nothing. They sat at a table near the window. Clara ordered 2 hot chocolates for the boys, who sat on either side of her like little sentinels. Leonardo sat across from them. His hands were on the table, open, vulnerable. I've never done this, he began. I don't know what the right words are, but I can't stop thinking about them. About you. I see their faces every time I close my eyes. Clara's eyes stayed on the boys. Then maybe you should have opened them 9 years ago. Leonardo nodded. You're right. Gabriel leaned toward Clara and whispered loudly, Mama, what's happening? Clara took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding so loudly she could barely hear herself think. This is someone I used to know, she said carefully. A long time ago. Matteo looked between them. You look like him. Leonardo smiled faintly. That's because we're family. Clara stiffened. No, she said sharply. You don't get to say that. Not yet. Leonardo met her gaze, full of pain. I'm not here to demand anything. I want to know them. Even if they hate me. Even if you do. I don't hate you, Clara whispered. I did. But now, I just don't trust you. The boys watched silently, confused but curious. Leonardo looked at them, his voice cracking. I don't deserve a place in your lives. I know that. But if you'd let me try, even just a little, I promise, I won't run away this time. Clara's hand curled around her cup. Her voice was soft. You said that once before. He nodded, eyes wet. I did. And I was wrong. Matteo stared at him. Are you our dad? The question broke the silence like thunder. Clara froze. Leonardo's breath caught. He looked at her, asking permission with his eyes. Clara hesitated. The moment stretched long and thin like it might snap under its own weight. Finally, she nodded. Just once. Leonardo turned back to them. Yes, he said quietly. I am. Gabriel looked up at Clara. Why didn't you tell us? Her eyes filled, but she kept her voice steady. Because I didn't know how to tell a story that wasn't finished yet. Leonardo's voice was trembling. I don't want to hurt you. I just want a chance. Matteo looked at him with wide, unsure eyes. Do you like chocolate pancakes? Leonardo blinked, surprised. Ah, yes. Gabriel grinned. Then maybe you can come for breakfast. Clara inhaled sharply. Just pancakes, Matteo added. Not living with us or anything. Clara stared at them, stunned. Boys? But they smiled. They didn't understand the depth yet, but they felt something real. Leonardo smiled for the first time in days. Then, just pancakes. And for the first time, something small, something fragile began to bloom in the cold. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe a beginning. Clara stared at it now, arms crossed, unsure if she wanted to laugh or cry. She hadn't slept much. After the conversation at the cafe, the boys hadn't asked more questions. They'd gone to bed with their usual chatter about monsters and soccer and dreams. But Clara had lain awake, listening to the silence, the weight of what she had agreed to pressing on her chest like a stone. She kept asking herself, was this a mistake? Was she opening a door that once destroyed her? Her hands were trembling as she poured syrup into a small dish. And then 3 soft knocks at the door. The boys ran before she could stop them. Matteo opened it. Leonardo stood in the doorway. He wore a plain gray sweater and jeans, looking almost human. Not the polished businessman. Not the powerful figure from headlines. Just a man holding a small paper bag in his hand. I brought orange juice, he said awkwardly. Gabriel blinked. We have juice. Leonardo smiled. Maybe you'll like this one. Clara appeared behind them, wiping her hands with a cloth. Her eyes landed on Leonardo's, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Come in, she said after a pause. He stepped inside slowly, eyes drifting across the room. The worn sofa, the bookshelf stacked with kids' drawings and fairy tales, the toys in the corner, the scent of pancakes in the air. It was a life, one he hadn't seen, one he hadn't been invited to, one that had gone on without him. The boys pulled him to the table, already talking over each other. Did you bring syrup too? Do you know how to make pancakes? I bet you never had to clean syrup off a cat. Leonardo laughed, genuinely, sitting carefully at the table like he was afraid it would vanish if he touched it too hard. Clara served them silently, watching from a distance. She was still tense, her eyes scanning every detail, every word, every move, as if waiting for the moment something would break. But nothing did. Not yet. Leonardo watched the boys eat, watched the way Matteo dipped each bite carefully and Gabriel shoved whole slices into his mouth. He listened to their stories about school and soccer and how they'd once built a rocket out of cardboard that almost flew. It wasn't until halfway through breakfast that the question came. Gabriel, mouth full of syrup, looked at him and asked, "Why weren't you here when we were babies?" The room went still. Clara's fork stopped midair. Leonardo's throat tightened. He looked at Clara first, silently asking, "Can I answer this?" She gave the smallest of nods. He leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. His voice was quiet, honest. "I made a mistake," he said. "A big one. I didn't know you were coming into the world. I didn't know about either of you. And by the time I did, too much time had passed." "Did you and Mama fight?" Matteo asked. Leonardo nodded slowly. "Yes, we did. And I was too proud to fix it. I thought I was doing the right thing by walking away. I thought I needed to build something big to be someone important." Gabriel squinted. "Like a castle?" Leonardo smiled faintly. "Something like that." "Did it work?" Matteo asked. Leonardo hesitated. "No, not really." There was silence again. Then Gabriel reached for his hand. "I'm glad you came back anyway." Clara turned away, her eyes stinging. After breakfast, the boys dragged Leonardo to their room to show him their drawings and Lego towers and the paper robot they had made together. Their laughter filled the small apartment like music Clara hadn't heard in years, something she hadn't realized she missed. She stayed in the kitchen, pretending to clean up, but really just breathing, trying to understand this strange new rhythm her life had taken. A while later, he returned to the doorway, standing there, watching her. "Thank you," he said softly, "for today." Clara didn't look up. "It was their idea." "I know, but you let it happen." Her hands gripped the sponge a little tighter. "Don't confuse pancakes with forgiveness." "I don't," he said. "I know there's a long road between here and redemption. But if today was a first step, I'm grateful." She finally looked at him, her voice low. "You're not the only one taking a risk. I know. They've never been hurt, never abandoned. Don't start something unless you plan to stay." He stepped closer, just slightly. "I don't know what staying looks like yet, but I'm not walking out that door and forgetting them. Or you." Clara swallowed. Her eyes searched his face for some trace of the man he used to be. And for the first time, she didn't see him. Not the same way. This man was quieter, slower, bruised in ways he hadn't been before. "Then show up," she said, "over and over, until they believe you." He nodded. "I will, because one breakfast won't fix what's broken. You understand that?" "Yes." Clara turned back to the sink. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "And neither will I." He didn't answer. He didn't have to, because now, for the first time since their lives shattered, there was something fragile standing between them. Not love, not forgiveness, but possibility. And for a woman who had learned to survive on nothing but truth, that was already more than she ever thought she'd give him. The boys had gone to school. Leonardo had left after breakfast, after promising he'd come back the next weekend to take them to the park. He had turned to Clara at the door, offered a gentle thank you, and walked away without pushing for more. That should have brought peace. But it didn't. Instead, it left Clara standing alone in her silent kitchen, staring at the empty cups on the table, her hands trembling against the surface as her thoughts spiraled. She had done everything right, protected them, raised them, kept their lives stable and full. But now, they had tasted something they'd never known. A father, presence, a puzzle piece they didn't even realize was missing. And what scared her wasn't Leonardo's charm. It was the way her sons had looked at him, with curiosity, with warmth, with hope. She couldn't protect them from that. That night, after she put the boys to bed, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at an old box tucked beneath it, one she hadn't opened in years. Slowly, she pulled it out, brushing off the dust with shaking fingers. Inside were pieces of the life before, photos, letters, a sonogram, A letter she had once written and never sent. She unfolded it with care. The ink was faded, but the words still screamed, "I don't hate you, but I can't forgive you either. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I just want you to know they exist. That they'll live without you. But that doesn't mean they'll never ask for you." Clara closed her eyes. They were asking now, and she had no idea what to give them. The next morning, she walked the boys to school. She watched them disappear into the building, laughing and carrying backpacks almost too big for their small shoulders. When the last bell rang and the doors shut behind them, she stood frozen on the sidewalk for a long time. And then, for the first time in 9 years, she turned her steps toward the law office downtown. It was time to prepare. If Leonardo wanted to stay, she had to know what that meant, what it could cost. Later that week, he called. His voice was quiet, careful. "I was thinking," he said, "maybe I could come by after school, just to talk. Maybe help with homework." Clara didn't answer right away. She stood by the window, watching raindrops roll down the glass. "I don't want to confuse them," she finally said. "I'm not here to take over, just to be there." She swallowed. "All right, but don't be late." He wasn't. That afternoon, he sat on the living room floor, surrounded by markers, colored pencils, and two energetic boys who argued over the best way to draw a dragon. Gabriel insisted dragons should breathe fire, while Matteo claimed they should breathe ice, because it's cooler. Leonardo laughed, caught between them. He didn't say much. He listened more than he spoke. And Clara, though she didn't join them, stood in the hallway and watched. A part of her wanted to believe. A part of her hated that she did. That night, when the boys were asleep, he didn't leave right away. He lingered by the door. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Clara folded her arms, nodding once. "Why didn't you ever try again? After the lawyer shut you out? Why didn't you come find me?" Her breath caught. She hadn't expected that question. Not from him. Not tonight. "I did try," she said. "I waited. I called. I showed up at your office. I begged." His face fell. "I didn't know." "I know you didn't," she whispered. "But after a while, I stopped trying. Because begging someone to love what they created feels like bleeding without a wound." The silence between them stretched long and fragile. Leonardo took a slow breath. "I never stopped thinking about you." She looked away. "That's the cruelest part. You thought of me, and still didn't come back." His voice cracked. "I was a coward. I thought if I cut everything off, I could become the man I wanted to be." She stepped closer, her voice low, almost trembling. "And did you?" He didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. Clara turned the lock on the door gently. "Good night, Leonardo." And this time she didn't watch him walk away. The next few days became a blur of contradictions. He kept coming, bringing snacks after school, fixing the leaky faucet, sitting with Matteo while he tried to write a poem about stars, and letting Gabriel fall asleep on his shoulder during a storm. And the boys began to change. They smiled more, asked fewer questions. Clara saw it all, and felt herself pulled into a war inside her chest. She wasn't just protecting them anymore. She was protecting herself, because part of her was starting to remember. His laugh, the way he whispered when the world was loud, the way he used to kiss her forehead in the mornings and call her his North Star. And that part was dangerous, because it still loved him. One evening, after dinner, Matteo tugged at her hand. "Mama?" "Yes, baby? Is it okay if we call him Papa?" Clara froze. Her heart cracked. "I just think it feels right," Matteo said, almost ashamed. "But only if you say it's okay." She crouched down, brushing his hair back, staring into the same eyes she once fell in love with. Her voice shook. "If that's what you feel in your heart, then yes." Matteo hugged her tightly, and Clara, for the first time in years, cried without hiding it. Later that night, Leonardo called. "I saw it in his eyes," he said, his voice breaking. "He called me Papa, Clara." She didn't speak. Do you believe in second chances?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "I believe in showing up. Not promises. Silence. And then I'll keep showing up. But Clara wasn't the only one listening. Outside the window, across the street, behind tinted glass, someone was watching, and she wasn't smiling. Veronica, the woman Leonardo had left behind in the city he once ruled. And she wasn't ready to let him go. Not to them. Clara watched them, her heart full and fragile all at once. But the peace didn't last. After school, Matteo was quiet. Too quiet. He sat at the table, his homework untouched, just staring out the window with a furrow in his brow. Gabriel was building a Lego castle on the rug, talking to himself, not noticing his brother's stillness. Clara noticed. She knelt beside him, brushing his hair gently. "What is it, mi amor? Something happened at school?" Matteo didn't look at her. His fingers fidgeted with the corner of his notebook. "There was a kid," he finally said. "Leo. He said something." Clara's chest tightened. "What did he say?" Matteo's eyes lifted to hers, wide, confused, aching. "He said that Dad never wanted us, that you made us by yourself, that he left you." Clara froze. Every sound in the house dulled. She could hear only the trembling of her own breath, the distant hum of a car outside, the painful stillness of her son waiting for the truth. "Who is Leo?" she asked softly. "A boy from another class. He said he heard it from his mom, that our dad's some rich guy who ran away." Clara sat back slowly, pressing a hand to her mouth. Gabriel looked up from the floor, sensing something shift. "Is it true?" Matteo asked, voice cracking. "Did he leave us? Did he not want us?" "No," Clara whispered, but her voice didn't feel strong enough. "No," Matteo repeated. "Then why weren't we enough? Why didn't he come before?" Clara blinked back the tears that threatened to fall. "It wasn't you. It was never you. You are more than enough, Matteo." "Then why?" he whispered. "Why did he only show up now?" Gabriel crawled into her lap, wrapping his arms around her waist. She held them both tightly. "I wish I could give you answers that make sense," she said. "But the truth is, sometimes adults make terrible mistakes. And your dad, he didn't know you were coming. And when he finally did, he didn't know how to fix it. Is he gonna leave again?" Matteo's voice was barely a breath. Clara closed her eyes. "I don't know." And that was the worst part, because she didn't. Not really. Later that night, when the boys were asleep, Clara stood on the balcony, her arms wrapped around her body. The city stretched out in silence below, the wind playing with the edge of her sweater. Her phone vibrated. Leonardo. She stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Hi. Hi," he said. His voice was soft, like he could already hear the weight in hers. "They heard something at school," she said. "About you. About us." He went quiet. "What did they say?" "That you didn't want them. That you left me. That you only came back because... Who knows?" She swallowed. "They're asking why." "And what did you tell them?" "The truth," she whispered. "That I don't know why. That I don't know if you'll stay." The silence stretched long between them. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I should have been there from the start. And now they're paying for that." "You are." Clara's voice broke. "They're hurting Leonardo. And it's not just the pain of not having a father. It's the pain of believing maybe they weren't worthy of one." He inhaled sharply on the other end. "I need to see them. I need to tell them myself." "Then you better say the right words," she said, her voice trembling with barely held anger. "Because if you make them hope, if you make them believe in something you can't hold on to, you will break them in ways I won't be able to fix." "I understand." "No, you don't," she snapped, tears now falling freely. "Because I spent 9 years building their hearts out of thread and faith and bedtime stories. You don't know how many nights I cried because they asked if they were missing something. If they were missing you. Clara, don't say my name unless you're ready to carry the weight of it." There was no answer, only his breathing, shaken, slow. "Then, I'll talk to them tomorrow, if you'll let me." She didn't speak. Her silence was its own kind of permission. The next evening, Leonardo arrived at the apartment with his heart pounding in his chest. He wore no armor, no suit, no mask, nothing to hide behind. Just his bare hands and a storm of guilt. The boys were on the couch, huddled together, nervous. Clara let him in with a quiet nod, then stepped into the kitchen, watching from a distance, her arms crossed, every muscle in her body tense. He sat on the floor in front of them. "I heard what happened at school," he began, "and I know you have questions." Matteo looked at him, lips pressed tight. Gabriel leaned into his brother. "I don't have a perfect answer," Leonardo continued, "but I have the truth, and I hope that's a start." He looked at them, truly looked. "When I was younger, I thought success was the most important thing in the world. I thought if I could build a business, if I could prove I was powerful, I would finally be enough." He paused, breath shaking. "But I left someone behind, someone who loved me, and I didn't know she was carrying the two greatest things I would ever create." Matteo blinked fast. "You mean us?" Leonardo nodded, voice cracking. "Yes, you." Gabriel's voice was barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you come for us?" "Because I didn't know you existed, and when I found out it was already too late. I had done too much damage, and I didn't know how to fix it. But now, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Matteo's lip quivered. "Even if we get mad at you? Even then? Even if we don't forgive you? Even then," Leonardo said. "Because love doesn't wait for forgiveness to start. It just keeps showing up." There was a pause. Then Gabriel reached for him, crawling into his lap. Matteo didn't move, but his shoulders relaxed. Clara, from the doorway, let herself breathe again. But deep in her chest, something whispered. This was only the beginning, because the past never stays buried. And the truth, the full, raw, unforgiving truth, had yet to reveal all its scars. And somewhere, just outside the edges of their peace, Veronica was waiting. Clara watched all of it unfold with cautious eyes. She didn't trust easily. Not anymore. And though the boys had started to call him Papa in soft voices, though they had begun drawing him into their crayon universes, a part of her still held back. One misstep from Leonardo and the entire fragile bridge he'd built could collapse. He seemed to know that. One evening, after dinner, he stood by the sink drying dishes while Clara wiped the table. The boys were in the room, playing with a puzzle, their voices drifting through the hallway like the distant echo of a better time. Leonardo's voice broke the silence between them. "I was thinking," he said quietly, not looking at her, "about starting something regular, something just for them. Saturdays, maybe. An afternoon, just us. Something we can build together." Clara dried her hands slowly. "And what happens when you get bored? When the schedule becomes inconvenient?" He turned to face her, towel still in hand. "Then I fight through the inconvenience. And I keep showing up." She searched his face for even a flicker of uncertainty, of hesitation. There wasn't one. "I don't need perfection," she said, "but I need consistency. That's what they deserve. You'll have it. They will." Her eyes held his. "You're still a stranger to them, Leonardo. Just because they're warming to you doesn't mean they understand who you are, or what you did. They're children. They forgive quickly, but they remember forever." "I know." Clara leaned against the counter, folding her arms. "You keep showing up. I'll keep watching." He nodded. "That's fair." But just as the rhythm was beginning to find its shape, something began to shift. First, it was small. A strange phone call during dinner that Leonardo didn't take. Face tightening when he saw the name. Clara noticed, said nothing. Then a woman showed up at the school gate during pickup. Tall, polished, red lipstick like blood. She didn't say a word, just watched from across the street as Clara ushered the boys into the car. Her stare lingered long after they drove away. Later that night, Clara was wiping down the dance studio mirrors when her phone buzzed. A message. "Unknown number, he left you once. He'll do it again. People like him don't change. They just get better at pretending." She stared at the screen, heart pounding. No name, no reply, just a shiver down her spine. She didn't tell Leonardo. She didn't know why. Maybe because some part of her was afraid it was true. Saturday came. Leonardo arrived early, wearing jeans and a navy hoodie, holding a box of board games and snacks. The boys ran to the door, pulling him in with wide smiles and shouts of, "Papa!" Clara watched from the kitchen, her arms crossed, her heart caught somewhere between fear and fragile trust. They played for hours. Laughter echoed through the walls. Clara heard Gabriel yell, "You're cheating!" and Leonardo laugh in protest. "I swear I'm not. He just has the strategy of a CEO." Even she smiled at that. Later, as the boys cleaned up, Leonardo found her in the kitchen again, pouring juice into small cups. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine. You've been quiet." She hesitated. "Someone texted me, from an unknown number, about you." His face changed instantly. "What did they say?" Clara met his eyes. "They said people like you don't change. That you'll leave again." He looked down, breathing slowly. "Veronica." Clara stilled. "Your ex-fiancée?" "She's not just angry," he said. "She's vengeful. And she's watching everything. So she knows about the boys." He nodded. "She found out. I didn't tell her. I swear I didn't. But she's resourceful. She probably hired someone." Clara's hands curled into fists. "So, now we're targets." "No," he said quickly. "You're not. I won't let her near you." Clara's voice sharpened. "Do you understand that I have everything to lose here? I'm not afraid of her. I'm afraid of what her words can do to them, of what your past might do to their peace." Leonardo stepped closer, his voice rough with emotion. "Then let me protect them. Let me earn the right to be here. I'll talk to her. I'll stop this. You shouldn't have to shield them from my mistakes." Her eyes welled up, and she blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. "You're not the only one trying to be brave. I know." They stood there, inches apart, in the quiet hum of a life that had only just begun to mend. In the next room, the boys were laughing again, calling for their father to come help them finish building a cardboard rocket. Leonardo turned toward the sound, then looked back at Clara. "I'll handle this. I promise." She didn't say anything, because she'd learned promises meant nothing until they were kept. But she let him go to the boys, and for now that was enough. Even as shadows moved just outside their door, even as Veronica dialed another number, and whispered, "Let's make things difficult." The war hadn't started yet, but the battlefield had been chosen, and Clara's peaceful world was about to be tested in ways she never imagined. The kind of day where everything felt just a little heavier. The sky hung low with gray clouds, and Clara couldn't shake the feeling in her chest. An unease that had nothing to do with the weather. She stood outside the school building, waiting for the boys to come out. Other parents milled around the entrance, chatting softly, checking their phones. Clara held her bag close to her side, eyes fixed on the school doors. When they finally opened, Gabriel and Matteo came out together. Back straight, expressions. Wrong. Something was off. Clara stepped forward immediately. "What happened?" Neither of them answered right away. Gabriel's eyes darted toward his brother, waiting. Matteo looked down at the ground. Clara knelt to their level. "Boys, what is it?" Matteo finally whispered. "Miss Jenny said something. About Papa." Clara's blood ran cold. She steadied her voice. "What exactly did she say?" Gabriel bit his lip. "She asked if we were the secret twins from the newspaper. She said your name was on the article, and Dad's. She said it wasn't right that you kept us hidden." Clara's throat tightened. "Did anyone else hear this?" Matteo nodded. The class was quiet. Everyone was listening. Clara stood up slowly, her hands clenched. She forced a breath into her lungs and reached for their backpacks. "Come on," she said. "Let's go home." The article was already online. The headline was cruelly crafted. Heir to Empire discovers secret twins after years of silence. Ex-lover speaks out. Clara's name was there. The twins' names. Photos from the gala. Quotes twisted into sharp edges. And at the center of it all, Veronica's statement. Clara's fingers trembled as she scrolled. I was engaged to Mr. CO for nearly 3 years. At no point did he mention a previous relationship this serious, let alone children. It's troubling to see him entangled in something so chaotic. I fear for the image of the company and the influence this drama may have on the children involved. She stopped reading. She couldn't breathe. Her phone rang. Evelyn. I saw it, Evelyn said without even saying hello. It's everywhere. Gossip sites, business pages. Clara, this isn't just a leak. This was planned. I know who did it, Clara said. Her voice was low, hollow. And she's not finished. She's trying to break you, paint you as some manipulative gold digger who hid his children for leverage. Clara swallowed. It's working. No, it's not, Evelyn said firmly. It's noise, but we fight noise with truth. What are you going to do? I don't know. There was a knock on her door. Clara opened it to find Leonardo on the other side. His face pale, eyes already red from whatever storm he just walked through. You saw it, he said. Clara didn't answer. She turned and walked back into the apartment, leaving the door open behind her. He stepped inside, closing it gently. The boys were quiet in the other room. Leonardo stood in the center of the living room, broken open. I didn't know she would go this far. She had pictures, Leo, Clara said, of the boys, of me. She used our lives like weapons. I'll handle it. You keep saying that, she snapped, turning to him. But this is bigger. She's trying to destroy me. She's painting me like I'm some scandal you forgot to bury. I've already called my lawyers. And what will that fix? Clara's voice cracked. The boys were humiliated today. Their teacher said those things in front of everyone. Parents are talking. Kids are whispering. I'm so sorry. I don't want apologies. Her hands were shaking. I want to know why she has this much power over our lives. Leonardo stepped forward. Because I gave it to her, he admitted. I built a life with her based on lies. I let her into every corner of my world. I let her speak for me in interviews, draft statements, manage press. I trusted her when I should have questioned everything. Clara's breath hitched. And now we're paying the price. I'll make a public statement, he said. One where I defend you, where I claim the boys. I'll stand in front of every camera if I have to. She shook her head. No, what? You don't get to use them like shields. Not even to protect them. You don't throw their names to the wolves and hope the pack shows mercy. Leonardo's voice broke. Then tell me what to do. Please. Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then quietly, tell them. Tell our sons that this isn't their fault. That they didn't do anything wrong. He nodded. I will. They need to know you're not ashamed. I'm not. She looked away. Then prove it. That night, after dinner, Leonardo sat with the boys on the floor of their room. He didn't speak like a businessman, or a public figure, or even a father trying to impress. He spoke like a man who had finally realized what he stood to lose. There's a lot of noise right now, he told them gently. People saying things about your mama, about you, about me, and none of it matters. Mateo looked down. Are we in trouble? No, Mijo, he said, reaching for his hand. You're the best things that have ever happened to me, and I should have told the world that a long time ago. Gabriel's voice was small. Is it true what they said? That we were secrets? Leonardo's voice cracked. No, you were never secrets. You were just the part of my life I didn't know how to find. Until it was almost too late. Are they going to stop talking? Mateo asked. No, Leonardo admitted. But we're going to keep living anyway. Clara stood in the hallway, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time, she wasn't holding them in because she had to stay strong. She was letting them fall because someone else was finally strong with her. But outside the apartment, the storm was still gathering. Veronica had more than words. She had leverage, and she had plans. The truth had come out, but the cost of it was just beginning. A heavy cream-colored envelope with a wax seal. She stared at it. Her palms were already sweating before she even touched it. Carefully, she bent down, picked it up, and opened it. Legal stationery. Petition for shared custody filed by Leonardo Co. filed on behalf of Mateo Valencia and Gabriel Valencia. The room tilted. She leaned against the doorframe, the groceries slipping from her hands, apples rolling across the floor. She didn't cry, not at first. She just stood there, heart pounding in her ears, the words on the page blurring and swimming like waves around her. And then rage. It was a slow boil at first, disbelief, a sick twist in her stomach. And then it erupted. She grabbed her phone and called him. He answered on the second ring. Clara. What the hell did you do? Her voice was low, dangerous. There was a pause. You got it. You filed for custody, Leonardo? She said, each word cutting sharper than the last. After everything we've been through? After all your promises to just show up? That's how you keep your word. It's not what you think. No, don't do that. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. You went behind my back. I didn't want to blindside you. Then why did you? He exhaled, voice tight with guilt. Because I got scared. Scared of what? That you'd finally have to earn them? That love wasn't enough without a legal claim. I'm not trying to take them away from you, Clara. I swear it. His voice cracked. But Veronica is pushing this. She's threatening to leak more, to twist this into something that makes me look negligent. She's calling investors, media outlets. She's trying to paint me as a liar, as someone who walked away from a family. If I don't prove legal involvement, she'll ruin everything. And what am I? She snapped. A pawn in your PR strategy? A mother you're willing to throw under a bus so you can protect your reputation? No, Clara, please. He was desperate now. This isn't about protecting me. It's about protecting them. If I have legal rights, I can stop her. I can shut this down. I can keep her away from the boys. Clara's breath trembled in her chest. Do you know what you've done? You've broken something I was just beginning to trust. I didn't want to go to court. I hate this. I hate that it came to this. Then withdraw the petition. I can't. Silence. I'm sorry, he said, almost in a whisper. Clara hung up. She couldn't breathe. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, surrounded by apples and papers and something inside her that felt like glass. That evening, Evelyn came over and held her hand while Clara stared blankly at the wall. They're saying it's mutual, Evelyn said. That both of you agreed. I didn't sign anything. I know, but his lawyers made it look amicable. Clara's jaw clenched. I want to fight. Then fight. Clara turned to her. What if I lose? You won't. You don't know that. No, Evelyn said softly. But I know you, and I know those boys, and I know they are not trophies. Clara blinked back tears. I trusted him. I trusted him with their hearts. And he may still be the man who wants to protect them, Evelyn said gently. But he's also a man trapped in a war he helped create. And now you have to choose. Protect your peace or prepare for battle. The next day, Clara told the boys. She sat them down after school, her voice trembling. There's going to be a meeting, she said. A meeting about where you live. About how time is shared between me and your dad. Gabriel looked up with wide eyes. Are you going away? No, she said quickly. No one's going anywhere. But your dad. He wants the court to say he can see you more often. Do we get to choose? Mateo asked softly. Clara paused. You'll be heard. That's what matters. Gabriel was already crying. I don't want a judge to tell me where to live. Clara pulled them into her arms. It's going to be okay. I promise you we'll get through this. Together. And even as she whispered those words, a part of her wondered, how do you win a war when your heart is tied to both sides? 2 days later, at the family court building, Clara saw him again. Leonardo, standing at the far end of the hallway in a charcoal gray suit. Not flashy, not showy, just quiet, measured, broken. Their eyes met across the distance. She walked toward him slowly, her heels clicking on the marble floor, each step a thunderclap of pain. When she stopped in front of him, he opened his mouth to speak. Don't, she said. Don't apologize again. I don't want to hear it. I need you to believe me, he said. I never wanted it to be like this. It is, she said coldly. You made a choice. You crossed a line. And now, you don't get to pretend you're just another parent trying to help. I'm still the same man who wants to be a father to them. No, she whispered. You're the man who's trying to claim them like land in a war. He flinched, and she walked past him into the courtroom. But inside, her heart was a storm, because he had once promised to fight for her. And now she was preparing to fight against him. And the worst part? She still loved the man she was about to face. But she loved her sons more. Clara sat on the left side of the room, her hands locked tightly together in her lap. She wore a navy blue blouse, hair pulled back in a neat twist, and her eyes never left the small notepad she held. Even though she wasn't reading anything, Leonardo sat opposite her, dressed in a dark suit. He hadn't looked at her once since they entered the room. His jaw was tight, his knuckles pale. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, but he didn't seem to hear it. The door opened. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Then, everyone sat. Clara could barely breathe. The hearing began with introductions, facts read out loud like wounds on paper. 2 children, 9 years old, previously unknown paternity. Recent public attention due to third-party media leaks. Clara listened, numb, as if they weren't talking about her. About them. Then came the testimonies. First, Leonardo. He stood. I wasn't present for the first years of my sons' lives, he began. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. They searched for Clara. She didn't look up. I didn't know they existed. I didn't leave them. I left their mother because I was young, blind with ambition, and scared of failure. I walked away from the one person who loved me honestly. The judge nodded. And what changed? Leonardo's voice faltered slightly. I saw them. And now you want shared custody. I want to be part of their lives. I want to protect them, support them, love them. The judge raised a brow. Do you believe you have the emotional consistency to commit to raising 2 children after 9 years of absence? Leonardo swallowed hard. I believe I have regrets, and I believe I can make something out of them if given the chance. He sat down. Clara stood. Her knees were shaking, but her voice was not. I don't deny that he loves them now, she said. But love isn't always enough. The judge leaned forward. Explain. I raised those boys alone. I taught them how to walk, how to speak, how to find their way through nightmares. I held them when they were sick. I sang to them when the lights went out and we couldn't afford candles. Her eyes burned, but she kept going. I protected them from every absence, especially his. I built their world so well they never even knew something was missing. Until he came back. Until all this happened. She glanced briefly at Leonardo. Just a flicker of pain passed between them. He says he didn't know. Maybe that's true. But the people who truly care, they find a way. They don't give up the second things get hard. They don't disappear. They don't come back and file court documents before having a real conversation. The judge nodded slowly, then looked between them. Have the children been informed of the process? Yes, Clara said. They are aware that a ruling could change their living arrangements? Clara's voice cracked, but she nodded. Yes. And how did they respond? They cried. Silence. The judge's pen scratched against paper for a moment, then paused. We'll need more time before issuing a recommendation, he said finally. I'll be assigning a child psychologist to evaluate the boy's emotional state. We'll reconvene after that. Gavel. Adjourned. Clara stood quickly, grabbing her things, wanting nothing more than to disappear. But as she turned to leave, Leonardo's voice stopped her. Clara, wait. She turned, her eyes blazing. No, you don't get to talk to me after doing this. You made your choice. Now live with it. He stepped toward her, the courtroom now almost empty. I thought this would be the only way to protect them from her, he said. Veronica is escalating things. She's been calling my company's board members, saying I'm unstable, that you manipulated me. She's hinting at a paternity scandal. I didn't know what else to do, So you filed for shared custody without telling me? She hissed. You involved our children in legal proceedings without warning? I was trying to give myself the right to defend them. You're still trying to control everything, she said. That's what this is about. You couldn't control the breakup. You couldn't control being left out. So now you're trying to write yourself back into the story like a hero. Leonardo's face twisted in pain. I'm not the hero. No, she whispered. You're the plot twist that keeps hurting. They stood in silence. Then Leonardo reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. Clara stared at it. What is that? My resignation, he said. From the board. From my company. Effective immediately. Clara blinked. Why? I'm stepping away from everything. From the empire I built. The headlines. The money. I'm selling most of my shares. I'm keeping only what I need. Because I meant what I said, Clara. I'm not walking away again. And I'm done letting someone like Veronica have a hold on my future. She stared at him, stunned. I want to be free, he said, so I can finally earn being their father. Not as the man who used to be important, but as the man who's finally choosing the right things. Clara took the envelope from him slowly. Inside was a single sentence typed at the bottom of the page. Sometimes building an empire means knowing when to walk away from it. She folded the paper and looked up at him, tears now shimmering in her eyes. But she didn't say a word, because trust wasn't built in a courtroom, and redemption didn't come in the shape of papers. But maybe, for the first time, it had finally begun. She stared at the sentence one more time. Sometimes building an empire means knowing when to walk away from it. It wasn't poetic. It was raw. And it sounded like Leonardo. The boys were asleep down the hall. Their bedroom door cracked just enough so she could still hear the gentle rhythm of their breath. She hadn't spoken to Leonardo since the hearing. Hadn't called. Hadn't texted. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But she couldn't deny it. The man who'd once chosen skyscrapers over her now stood with nothing. No crown, no kingdom. Only 2 small boys and a second chance in his hands. And for the first time, she was the one holding the power to say no. Or yes. She looked up as the floor creaked outside her room. A second later, a soft knock. Come in, she said gently. Matteo peeked in, eyes sleepy. Mama. She set the letter aside. What is it, baby? He walked in slowly and climbed into her lap, curling against her chest like he used to when he was little. I had a dream, he mumbled. That Papa left again. And this time we couldn't find him. We were yelling his name, but he didn't hear us. Clara closed her eyes. The ache inside her flared like an old wound. I'm scared, he whispered. What if he disappears again? She wrapped her arms around him, kissing his forehead. I don't think he will, she said softly. I think he's trying. But he hurt you, Matteo murmured. I heard you crying the other night. Clara's heart cracked. She didn't think they'd heard. She should have known. He did hurt me, she admitted. A long time ago. And sometimes it still hurts. But pain doesn't always mean something is bad. Sometimes it means something important is changing. Are we going to be okay? She kissed his hair. Yes, baby. We are. We always will be. He didn't reply, just rested there a little longer until he finally drifted back to sleep. Clara carried him back to his bed, tucking him in carefully. When she turned to leave, she found Gabriel awake too, eyes open, watching. Was it the dream again? He asked. Clara nodded. Gabriel sat up. Is Papa coming back tomorrow? I don't know. He looked down. I want him to. She nodded. I know. The next morning, there was no knock at the door. No message. No call. And Clara told herself that was good. She needed space. Time. Stillness to think. But by late afternoon, a feeling crept in. The kind that tells you something isn't right. She picked up her phone and called Leonardo. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. By evening, Evelyn came by to drop off some dance studio papers. Clara tried to act normal, but Evelyn saw through it instantly. What's wrong? He's not answering, Clara said. So? Maybe he's just… No, Clara interrupted. He always answers, even when I don't ask him to. Evelyn sat down slowly. You think something happened? I don't know, but I feel off, like something's pulling at me. They sat in silence for a moment before Evelyn said, Then go find him. Clara blinked. What? You heard me. Go. He chased you halfway across the city. Maybe now it's your turn to chase him back. Clara hesitated, then grabbed her coat. She called his lawyer. No answer. She called the assistant from his company, the one who used to arrange every one of his press meetings. She picked up. He resigned, the assistant said immediately, voice cold. Left everything in a flash. I haven't heard from him in 2 days. Clara's voice tightened. Where did he go? The woman hesitated. He mentioned a cabin, somewhere outside the city. I don't have details. Clara hung up and drove. For hours. Through winding hills, rain-slick roads, and the kind of silence that wraps around your chest like vines. Until she saw it. A small cabin tucked between pine trees, half lit by a single porch light. She got out of the car, her shoes crunching on the gravel. And then she heard it. Piano. Soft. Halting. Broken. She followed the sound, heart thundering, until she reached the door. It was open. She stepped inside. Leonardo sat at the piano, hunched, eyes closed. He didn't see her. He was just playing. A tune that had no name, no rhythm, only sadness. She stepped forward quietly. He turned, startled. His face was pale. His beard was thicker. His eyes had dark rings under them like he hadn't slept. What are you doing here? He asked. I could ask you the same. He looked away. I didn't think you'd notice. Clara's voice cracked. You disappeared. What was I supposed to do? I didn't mean to worry you, he said. I just needed a day. I needed to feel the silence. The kind that doesn't come with expectations. Or apologies. She looked around. The sparse furniture. The notes scattered on the table, sketches of designs, outlines for some kind of future, but all unfinished. You're spiraling, she said. Maybe. Why didn't you tell me? He looked at her. Because I didn't want to be weak again. I didn't want you to see me like this. Not after I promised to be strong for the boys. Clara stepped closer. You don't have to be strong all the time. That's not what they need. That's not what I need. He stared at her, eyes glossy. I don't know who I am if I'm not fixing things, Clara. She reached for his hand. You're their father. That's who you are. That's all they care about. He whispered. And you? She didn't answer right away. Then finally, in a soft, aching voice. I'm not ready to say what I am, but I'm here. His eyes filled. And for the first time in years, he let himself cry. Not out of regret, but release. Because maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to fight this war alone. Leonardo was already awake when Clara stirred. He sat on the wooden steps of the porch, a mug in his hands, eyes fixed on the horizon like he was trying to find something he'd lost long ago. Clara stood behind the screen door, watching him in silence. For a moment, she wasn't angry. She wasn't scared. She wasn't a mother or a woman scorned. She was just Clara, the woman who once loved a boy who dreamed too fast and ran too far. She opened the door slowly, stepping outside. The wood creaked beneath her feet. He didn't turn. I didn't sleep, he said. She sat beside him, pulling her sweater tighter around her shoulders. I didn't either. He handed her the mug without looking. She took it and held it between her palms, grateful for the warmth. They didn't deserve any of this, he said. The boys. You. No, she agreed softly. They didn't. But we can't undo what's been done. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice trembling. Do you think they'll forgive me? They already have, she said. Children forgive with their whole hearts. But it's not forgiveness that's fragile. It's trust. That's what takes time. That's what you haven't earned yet. Leonardo nodded, eyes full of something heavy. Clara looked out at the trees. You can't keep disappearing, Leo. You can't vanish every time it gets hard. That's not what being a parent is. I know, he whispered. I know now. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small piece of folded paper. I wrote them something, he said. For the boys. It's not polished. But I wanted to give them something from me. Not a press release. Not legal documents. Just words. Clara hesitated, then took it. She unfolded the paper and began to read. Dear Matteo and Gabriel, I don't know how many times I can say I'm sorry before the words start to lose meaning. So instead of telling you again, I want to show you. Every day. In every way I can. I didn't know about you. And when I found out, I still didn't know how to deserve you. But I'm learning. I want to be there when you fall and when you fly. I want to be there when you're scared and when you're brave. I want to be the kind of man you're proud to call Papa. Not because I gave you my name, but because I never gave up on you once I knew you were mine. If I have to rebuild our bond brick by brick, I will. Love always, Papa. Clara read it twice. Then folded it gently and placed it in her coat pocket. I'll give it to them when the time feels right. Thank you. They sat in silence again for a long while. Then Clara turned to him. What are you going to do now? I don't know yet, he admitted. But I know what I won't do. I won't chase power anymore. I won't try to own what I should only be grateful to hold. He looked at her then. Really looked. His voice dropped. And I won't stop showing up. She blinked, heart tight. You said that before. I mean it now. With no business to run, no empire to protect. Just this, just them. And maybe, if you'll let me, just a little bit of you. Clara's breath caught. You don't get to have pieces of me, she said softly. Not anymore. It's all or nothing. And I don't even know if all exists for us anymore. He nodded slowly. I understand. She stood. We should go. The boys are waiting. The ride back was quiet, filled with unspoken thoughts and the hum of tires on gravel. When they arrived at the apartment, the boys were already home, sitting on the living room floor surrounded by colored paper and half-finished crafts. Gabriel looked up first and ran to the door. Papa! Leonardo dropped to his knees just in time to catch him in his arms. I missed you, Gabriel said, breathless. I missed you too, Leonardo whispered, voice breaking. So much. Matteo walked over more slowly. He didn't say anything at first, just studied his father with quiet, thoughtful eyes. Leonardo reached for him gently. I'm here, he said. I'm not going anywhere. Matteo stepped into his arms. Clara watched them, standing at the edge of the room, her hand over her mouth. Later, when the boys were asleep, Leonardo slipped the letter under their pillows without a word. Clara walked him to the door. As he was about to leave, he paused. Would it be okay if I came tomorrow? Same time. She nodded. They'd like that. And you? He asked carefully. I don't know yet, she replied. But I didn't lock the door. A small, hopeful smile flickered across his face. Then he turned and walked down the hallway, not like a man leaving something behind, but like a man finally learning how to stay. And this time, she watched him go, because there was no fear in her heart now, only the slow, tentative rhythm of something beginning again. Always at the same time, with the same quiet knock on the door that now felt less like an intrusion and more like a heartbeat. Steady, present. He never arrived empty-handed. Sometimes it was a book for Matteo, sometimes a silly science experiment kit for Gabriel, or pastries from a tiny bakery that Clara once mentioned liking. Back when they were still a couple who made promises in whispers. He never stayed too long. Just long enough to help with homework, share dinner, tell a bedtime story. Then he'd leave, always waiting for Clara's subtle cues. Her folded arms if the day had been hard. Her softened eyes if it had gone well. She never asked him to stay, but she no longer asked him to leave. One evening, Matteo climbed into his lap during a rainstorm. The apartment was dim, golden light pooling from the kitchen lamp while the sound of rain tapped gently on the windows. Papa, Matteo whispered, did you really give up your company? Like, forever? Leonardo nodded. I did. Why? Leonardo looked across the room. Clara stood silently in the kitchen, drying a plate. She didn't interfere. Because I spent too many years chasing something that didn't hug me back, he said. And I realized everything I wanted was already here. I just hadn't been brave enough to see it. Gabriel popped his head up from the blanket fort. So you're not a boss anymore? Leonardo laughed softly. No, just a dad now. And that's enough for me. Clara glanced over, her lips trembling. Not from sadness this time, but something else. Something that resembled peace. Later that night, when the boys were asleep, Leonardo stood at the door as always. But this time he